Okay. Right. I don't know if all of you can, if anyone can sort of give us a shout if we stop going live, because I'm not going to be checking. So if we do stop going live, someone just holler.
I'll put it on a small screen.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to kick things off with just a little bit of an intro to this evening's conversation and what we're going to be discussing with the speakers that have joined us today on our virtual couch with what will hopefully, I'm sure, will undoubtedly be a very interesting conversation. Just before we wrap things up for the summer season. So very briefly, MCC, Multi Creative Collective, is an independent movement which Carla and I kicked off in 2017. And the whole intention of the collective is really to bring together like-minded creatives that are based in or connected to Malta with the ultimate objective of elevating the local creative community and visual literacy. So that translates into a whole bunch of stuff, which includes things like today's online webinar. We have physical social meetings and meetups, which can be both social and a little bit more workshop related. So they might be sort of focused on a topic. In fact, next week, just a little bit of a bracket, we'll be having our summer meetup over at Cafe Society. On the 8th of July from 7 p.m. and it'll all be outdoors, so we'll make sure that we're all responsible and sensible with the whole social distancing and finally getting to catch up with everyone since, well, I think our last meetup, Carla, was it November? Because I was trying to remember, and I think it was something like November. So it's been a while.
Yeah, because we had one scheduled for the week when the pandemic hit Malta.
Yes. That's right.
And yeah, I had to cancel that one. So we'll see.
Yes, it was March that we had sort of planned the last social gathering. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone again in the flesh and not over a screen. I think we're all pretty much done with the screen thing for now, as much as it is great to be able to connect with people from all over, not just in Malta, but it's also great to be able to actually see people in person and and share a drink and a physical conversation. So we're very much looking forward to that. Carla, do you want to introduce today's topic and then we'll give space to the speakers to introduce themselves very briefly?
Yeah, sure. So today, during our 6th episode, we will be talking about the shifting tides of content creation. This is a topic we started to discuss amongst ourselves when the pandemic hit. And our reason for inviting you all to talk about this is that we've seen a rise of online through this pandemic globally, not just in Malta. So everybody's either shifting their business online, ordering food online, shopping online, paying bills online. So much of what we used to do physically in store has now shifted to a digital platform. However, have we taken content into consideration? How have we adapted advertising and content creation? And how have viewers expected to see this or see a development in this? And that's what we will be discussing today with photographer Brian Grech, Brandwagon Agency CEO Peter Grech, and Hannah Witter, who's a content creator. So over to you, Ross, to kick off the first question.
Yes, just before we do that, I just wanted to give the virtual mic over to each of the three speakers who are going to just very briefly expand a little bit on your intro, so that if they can just tell us a little bit about what they do. Hannah, do you want to kick off and sort of give us a little bit of enlighten us on what you do?
Sure. My name is Hannah Witter O Rourke. I am a content creator. I am a podcaster. I do social media management, just a few bits and bobs all over the internet. I got into making YouTube videos in 2017, originally in Malta, and then that kind of turned into me managing social media platforms and then creating my own content just as I grow, and I'm still learning today. So yeah, that's basically what I do.
Awesome. Peter, do you want to tell us a little bit about your corner of the island and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So hi, my name is Pete. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of BRND. For those of you who don't know us, BRND is a strategy, design, and tech agency. We basically work with brand builders, business owners, and we help take their brands in front of audiences. A lot of our time is spent, working and collaborating with a lot of creatives, a lot of people within the industry, a lot of good and great content creators, and also, listening to our clients and the aspirations that they have for their own brands, and finding novel ways and creative ways to take them online. This year has been one of the biggest teachers for me as a CEO. We've been through some tough times, but we've got enough problems to fix in one hand and stuff to be grateful in the other hand. So life is pretty balanced right now.
It's always about balance. I agree, definitely. And finally, Brian, if you could just give us a little bit of intro as to your professional background and what you do.
So basically, I've been a photographer for about 22 years now. I do a variety of different types of photography. Lately, obviously, most of the content is being published online, because obviously it's more online platforms. So from individual clients to agencies, and obviously anyone who wants their product out there, and to make sure that, we create the picture and get the best out of whatever needs to be shown, I suppose.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to kick off with the first question, which is really just a little bit to introduce the context within which we are discussing the whole topic of content creation. And as Peter briefly mentioned at the very beginning when he introduced himself, obviously we've gone through some very radical, extraordinary, and all the rest of it kind of times. I mean, we've heard the adjectives being bounced around since March, so I think we get what we've been through. And the question that we wanted to throw out to each of you individually was, how did things shift for you work-wise during the first few weeks of the whole lockdown situation when it all started in March? And then how did that sort of evolve over the sort of last couple of months up until now? Just to give us a little bit of an idea of how things have shifted and changed since March. So Hannah, perhaps you want to kind of kick things off for us and give us a little bit of an overview of how things have been on your corner.
Yeah, I think, well, we've heard the word unprecedented being used far too many times, but that's exactly what it was. Any plans you had within a 6-month, 2-year period with most of your clients, it just like went up in smoke. And then you were dealing with just like managing and putting out little fires here, there, and everywhere. So I think that was the first wave and kind of shock. And then it went I think it went kind of quite quiet. Everyone kind of went a little bit inwards, people really closed off to the world. And that's kind of, I feel like for myself personally, like I was managing a lot of accounts, and then I had also only traveled back home from Ireland, and I arrived in Malta and basically everything had shut down. So all of the plans that I had in the works basically changed and were no more. So I think I went a lot like inwards a lot, and then I started to kind of like upskill. I learned Procreate. I'm learning like different programs as well for myself. So I kind of just took the time, even though obviously I'm fortunate enough where I didn't have to like worry as much as a lot of other people about like paying my rent. So I just took the time to like really, really push and like upskill where I want to be in the future. So I was very, very fortunate with my situation. But I think now people are still really cautious. So you're just trying to kind of move and shift, be artistic, be creative, and then also be really, really sensible in terms of a business point of view as well, because you don't want to just like pump money or pump ideas into something that could possibly change in October or September. So I think people are still like on that tightrope. I personally like started a podcast with my fiance. We had planned this probably months before, but this lockdown just gave us like a push as well. So I think it's been, obviously there's been positives and huge negatives, and you're just trying to kind of create something long lasting with the time that we've all had in this crazy time.
Yeah, it's been a wave, undoubtedly, which I think perhaps Brian and Peter might be able to sort of resonate with what you said. But Brian, do you want to perhaps give us a little bit of an insight into what happened on your end of things when sort of March came and hit us in the gut?
Yes, of course. As Hannah was saying, probably it's the same. Like everything stopped, especially a lot of photo shoots at your location, whether it's hotels, restaurants, or I don't know, fashion editorials and so on. So obviously life was kind of cancelled for the first month. Then we started a bit again with maybe some product photography. So I was doing some shoots at home and like items which could be photographed kind of, yes, at home. But still, obviously, things are still slow and people are still cautious. And well, at the same time, I think it's a bit of a mix because some people are, yes, want their product out there, but at the same time, you know, it's a bit of a, no one knows exactly what's happening. So it's a bit of a still an unsure situation of where things are going. But they're definitely much better now than obviously people are out and can meet and, you know, kind of do the social photography part and again be back on locations and so on.
So you actually shifted a little bit more now towards actual shooting on location as opposed to shooting products. Has that kind of started happening, or at least requests for? Or
yes, for example, we had some restaurants. Again, we were doing obviously shoots on location, especially with food. You know, they need their own kitchen, especially certain type of restaurants that need a kind of proper kitchen, not just heating up food kind of thing. So that's not possible, obviously, to do at my house. So I had some, yes, restaurant shoots again on location and some interiors, which obviously, well, either people live in them or just, you know, there are locations which we go to. Then products still, sometimes that I still do here anyway. So.
Do you find that you just had to start minimizing your team or minimizing people who can visit the shoot in order to keep the work going, or was that?
Yes, actually the first, actually that was, with product, obviously it's just a product, so that's kind of all right. But yes, the first kind of fashion shoot we had was a bit of a strange situation, you know, of how it's working with hair and makeup and so on. Actually not more from my side, because obviously with photography I don't need to, you know, be touching models or so on, so I can keep my distance. But obviously if there is makeup and other things involved, it was still a bit of a strange scenario, you know, but yes, people were limiting the amount of people on location, especially for fashion shows, because the rest, if it's, I don't know, in restaurants, it's just the chef preparing the food and take the photo, so there isn't much contact as such. So not in the first, obviously, weeks, because the first weeks were obviously at a standstill. So it's only when it was later that it was more kind of okay that we started to do more of the location shoots.
Interesting. And what about you, Peter, on your end? I mean, wow.
How long is this webinar again? Do we have time?
Well, technically we have another 5-7 minutes, but yes.
Yeah, we'll probably have to split it up in two parts. Yeah, look, I think the whole scenario, the whole COVID scenario, was a real sort of, you know, a big kick in the gut, as you explained before. So Brandwagon, we've been through some really big and tough changes. So I'm not going to lie, you know, we had some really tough times. We saw a huge, significant drop in sales at the very beginning. We did what we could to kind of survive. Unfortunately, you know, within a month of COVID hitting, we had to let go of some of our people, some of our colleagues, teammates, friends. And that was probably the toughest thing I've ever had to do as a CEO, along with, you know, the leadership team and my partners. So that was a really tough thing for us. You know, thankfully, a number of them have found jobs. We've managed to hire one back, but obviously it was a very tough time for them. We went remote first 117 days ago, as I explained to you before. We've, you know, shifted to a 4-day week. We've had to kick down our rates. We've, you know, done reductions everywhere we could. So that was from an operational front. So from a kind of, you know, CEO learning curve, that was like massive MBA spike, you know, within a couple of days. Today we see things are coming back to some sort of new reality as opposed to normality, if you wish. there is business out there. We spent a lot of time, dedicated to helping our clients, to helping people in the community, even people who couldn't afford our services. We launched, rack bottom kind of online shops, online stores for people who needed to get online really quickly. We operated like a roster-based free 1 hour consultancy service to anybody who needed it, from charities to startups and all that. So that's kind of how we kicked off and started off. Now there's a kind of there is a bit of a rhythm going. There is a bit of work coming in. There's some work coming in also internationally, which is great. I think people putting down their budget is an opportunity for smaller agencies and bigger agencies in smaller countries to reach out and do bigger stuff. So that's great for us. Operationally, again, we came back to the office just on the 1st of July. And we're operating on a remote first kind of system. So pretty much we've reconfigured the office. We've moved everything to a kind of hot desking concept, but hot desking just for our own team. So you can book, any series of 4-hour slots per week. So that's the kind of process we're looking at. But I think the biggest thing was kind of, creatively, within 24 hours, just looking at all the big campaigns that we had planned ready for the whole season to start, and just say, okay, how do we just, rejig this? How do we completely reconfigure everything? And how do we try and understand, what our brand's audiences are feeling, and how do we create something which actually resonates for them? So yeah, not doing too bad there.
Well, we're still here, so that's already, the fact that we're all...
No one's asleep yet.
We're still here and we seem to have it all together, so that's already, a step in the right direction. But yes, I mean, all of us, I feel, as I said at the beginning, with what sort of Hannah said, kicked off with, the initial shock, and then we kind of all had to sort of reassess where on earth we were going, whether it was professionally, personally, a lot of things to take into consideration. I mean, it was unprecedented indeed. So yes, that adjective I think is going to define 2020 and for many centuries to come.
I hate that word. If I could just add one thing actually that we did was, I think it was a massive exercise in humility. And what we've been through, as a leadership team of Brandwagon, we kind of sat down together and really questioned what we were doing and who we were doing it for. And I think that really started to question the clients we had, the type of jobs we were doing, and what we wanted to still continue to do. And I think we've always had kind of this, unspoken philosophy that in the choice between being rich and being happy, we always choose happy. And I think this was a really good sort of wake-up call and say, okay, our clients, are we doing what we really want to do? Are we really fulfilling our purpose? Are we really delivering what we feel proud to be delivering? And that has taught us some new lessons. And I think that's given us a lot of new fire in our bellies to kind of continue and chase what we've always wanted to. So that's kind of a great opportunity out there.
So it's kind of revived the passion in the team in a way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I can't say the passion never died. I'm really grateful to have such a great team of my colleagues are fantastic people. They've really, as tough as it's been for all of them, they've really been extremely agile, and those who've suffered got all the support from others. And I think, we've obviously had our flare-ups, we've obviously had our disagreements. Thankfully they've been through Zoom calls, so that makes life slightly easier or softer if you wish. But, it's been a real, amazing experience to see how many people have come around and have, clearly grown up and really, been really agile in confronting all these new sort of struggles and whole unprecedented hurdles, or feels like being slapped in the face every morning. What's next? What's new? I don't think the worst is over, honestly. I'm trying to be as positive as I can. I don't think the worst is over. I think economically, there are struggles ahead, but obviously there's going to be opportunities ahead. So I think as we are creatives, we're all agile creatives, and that's the whole essence of being creative. And we need to look at new opportunities and learn new ways and carry on.
I completely agree with you with you're kind of reassessing your clients though, for sure, because you're just kind of like, I've been putting all of this energy into this client or person or project, whatever it is. And then you kind of, especially that quiet time, I feel like just after March, like you really just thought about like the amount, what you were getting out of it, not just financially, maybe their energy or they're not appreciating your ideas. So I definitely feel that on a whole level for sure.
Yes, and I think that leads us on really well to the second question, because this readjusting of priorities and the way that we perceive the work that we do and why we even do it is inevitably going to have an impact on the content that we create. So Carla, do you want to sort of introduce the second question, which
Sure.
Peter's going to spearhead?
So based on all of your most recent experiences that you've already discussed with us, would you say that the future of online content will need to be adapted? And if so, how? So what sort of substance, like what sort of switch might we have? Do things need to be more sensitive towards a new market and a new way of advertising? And maybe you can also speak about how you think things have been put out there during the pandemic and not just the future of content creation.
Mm-hmm. I can jump in to answer that quickly. I think anybody managing any sort of channels, any social media content has had a real massive surprise to their plans, and everybody had to quickly switch and quickly try out and test. And I think that's the kind of the essence of social media, is the fact that you need to be agile, you need to be ready to adapt, but you also need to be very, very clear about what the overall strategy is that you're working on. I think this was a perfect time to really understand what are the main key principles that stand behind the brands that we represent. What is the key story that we're trying to tell, and how do we tell it in a more authentic way? Being sensitive to what's happening out there, being empathetic to what's going on. So I think everything has shifted and everything has changed, but everything should have shifted and should have changed by the same merits of the way things are going in the past. As in, what is your brand story? What are you trying to connect? How are you trying to connect, and with who? What is the spirit of your brand lie, and how do you convert that? I think it's also been a massive opportunity because people have been sitting idle at home, twiddling their thumb literally on screens, and exploring to content. And there's been so much more competition to, just for eyeballs in terms of, what are you watching? What are you being engaged with? There's been a huge rise in the consumption of different channels. So, probably whilst Instagram has had potentially a little hit, I think, channels like TikTok have, come from, not from nowhere, but oh my God, what a massive opportunity, and we're laughing now, but I remember, when we started working with Facebook 11 years ago, about 10 years ago, those were the same smiles and laughs we got, from our clients. Oh, Facebook, that's just for kids. No, it's not just for kids, and if you're not looking at TikTok, if you're not looking at, new channels coming up from nowhere, you just be ready to be swept aside, because, it's going to take its natural course. And, I think there's been so many opportunities. We're all, all of a sudden, running webinars, everybody knows how to use Zoom calls. My kids have become IT gurus. I've just become the network administrator, and the whole consumption has changed completely. So, brands have had to become quick and agile to understand what's going on. But the story, the truth of your brand, the essence of your brand just remains there fundamentally. And it's just, successful content needs to engage, but also needs to be authentic. And that's fundamentally the key principle there.
Didn't you feel that before this, brands were already trying to have a more authentic story that they were pushing out there? Because I feel like telling a story of a brand is something that has been happening over the past few years, that brands are really trying to engage more with their audiences. I mean, maybe this has pushed them further or pushed the more commercial brands to try and be more authentic. I'm not sure about that sort of.
Well, I think the keyword in the statement is you cannot try to be authentic. You're either authentic or you're not. So I think there's a key
I
stuff
hate that
over
word.
there.
It's been used so many times. I try to find other words when I say authentic. I'm like genuine, but the reality is, as you say, Pete, it's about expressing an innate essence that you have within you. So it's not something you can fabricate. I mean, maybe Hannah or Brian have something to add to this, because I mean, it's a huge topic that we could spend 40 hours on just on this alone.
Yeah.
Well, like I have basically my partner streams on this platform called Twitch, and the traffic that has come up on this platform is just like absolutely insane. Since lockdown happened, there was no live sports. People were just like on it already. I think people are craving, they don't want perfection, they don't want to be lied to, they just want somebody to connect to. Like, that's all that they want. It's nothing about, like, people have been sold lies for years about like brands and this will change your life and this, and people know it's a lie already. So I think people are just like looking for something fresh, looking for something new. They want like actual real life connection with the people that they follow, the brands that they follow. They want sustainability, they care about Black Lives Matter. Like, there's just been this like absolute wave of consciousness, I feel, and it's just because people are tired of being just like this, like just being given this like lie that if you buy all of these things, you're going to be a happy person or you're going to be content. And it's just like, I think people are waking up that they want to connect with brands because there's real people behind the clothes that you make and the food that goes in the kitchen and stuff like that. So it's just like, it's like really creating like a community. I think people really are craving that at the moment, and especially even when people were just like maybe alone in their apartment and stuff like that, they felt like that they could be part of a community. So like, even for example during lockdown, like we did a fundraiser for Peter House. It's a suicide awareness platform. We raised like €13,000. Like, it's just like insane, you know. Like, and like, so people are just like, that's just from the channel. Like, people are just like wanting to connect. We did a 24-hour stream. We played like a silly video game. Like, it was like ridiculous, to be honest. Like, I don't play poker, and I was like playing poker as well. It was just like, we were delirious by the end, but we you know, we brought people together. Like, that's all that people want.
Really cool.
I think that's going to have an impact on the way that content is commissioned as well. Because at the end of the day, I mean, brands can, as you say, Hannah, they can lie and fake it, but at the end of the day, consumers are starting to become even more picky and a lot more conscious about, as you say, where are your clothes being made, where is the food that you're eating being grown, and that is going to demand transparency from companies, from brands, no matter how large or small they are, and ultimately, that is going to make an impact on the content that they bring to the table, because they don't want, obviously, people to shy away from the brand. They want people to buy from them. So in that case, they have to become a lot more consistent. So the fakeness is automatically going to fall to the wayside. Some will be quicker than others to adopt this. I really do feel we're sort of, well, I'm an idealist, sort of, you know, my world is probably not, you know, the reality of the situation, but ideally we are shifting in that situation. Brian, you're sitting there in my little corner, bottom right-hand corner of my screen. I'd love to hear what you have to say about, well, about Carla's question and about this whole thing on authenticity and just bringing something genuine to the table.
Yes, I think this shift was quite visible even with bigger brands and foreign brands, showing there that kind of the core values of the company. However, what I saw locally maybe was more that some companies weren't online and got online kind of because they needed to sell online. And unfortunately, some of their websites or content possibly didn't reflect anything of the core values of the company. So it was a matter of just you put your product there and people can buy. I have a website that works, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I think now, maybe because there has been a bit more time, some of these companies are realizing the importance of the way the content is projected and that it reflects the brand, or, you know, the difference between their product and their competitors or a similar product. But I think at the beginning, when people just selling online because of the shops were closed, it was, well, some still are, was a bit just a matter of just take a photo with your phone, put it there, and people will buy it. Now, both from the customer point of view and the brands are realizing that they need better content for, obviously, even the consumer to understand better what they're buying online since they're not seeing it physically, and so on. So I think that shift is improving slowly now, as opposed to the beginning when it was a matter of just throwing product there. Obviously, there are still people who are clueless with online and they just think, you know, just take a photo and put it there and it works.
So in a way, they were almost losing their identity by just putting content out there without thinking about their story or what they...
Yes, because sometimes it was even from a matter of maybe the design of the website, which didn't reflect anything there. The content, actual photos and content. So all in all, I think probably it reflected nothing of maybe what the core value of the company was. So I guess it served its purpose for people they wanted to buy into the company they already know. But I think it stopped there. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think if people were looking at, sorry, go ahead, Carla.
I was just going to ask whether you had a lot of clients that were coming up to you quickly for that sort of reason, where they didn't have that online presence and just had quick photos that they wanted you to put up on a website that maybe you would have worked on to create this beautiful website to launch on a certain date, and then it was rushed and everything. I don't know if you experienced that, but there was this mad rush for content to go online, I guess.
Look, the reality is, you know, when you see your business sinking, when you see, you know, everything that you've strived so hard for, you know, going down and you know, you've got to put food on the table, you've got to pay wages, you've got to pay rent. You know, I don't think it's fair to judge what everybody did to try and sort themselves out. Having said that, obviously, as Brian said, you know, there's been so many, you know, eyeball rolling moments where you see something which is, oh my God, how did they let that one go out? You know, people copying other people's stuff and just chucking out there because, yeah, it looks exactly the same. No, it doesn't look anywhere close to what it should look like. Thankfully, we you know, we might have saved a couple of customers from putting stuff on their sites, you know, which wouldn't have helped them. Let's put it that way. And it's obviously, you know, we see things with a different eye, and we're in a position where we can support and we can help. So, you know, that was a good place to be. Obviously, there were loads of clients coming to us and, you know, kind of saying, hey, we need help and we need to be online. And we need to be online now. In fact, it pushed us to actually work on our own online shop to help customers who don't have the capacity to launch a site to, you know, to come up with some sort of, you know, kind of local Amazon style portal where, you know, customers who don't have the capacity, who don't have the time, who don't have the means to actually go online, and the site should be launched in a couple of days. But I think it's been a real huge wake up call for a lot of Maltese businesses to understand that, you know, if there was a chance and a time for a digital transformation, it is now. I think the people who are going to be winning the game moving forward are people who understand that the tech needs to work, that the logistics need to be sorted out, and the user experience has to work online even better than it worked offline. Because now, you know, people are going back into the shops slowly, but they're not going into the shops in the same way. You know, people have time to choose, people have more time to stay at home. And you know, technology is where the up is on. Even if you look at the stock market, you know, if you look at shares of, you know, brands like Zoom, of course, you know, it's all on the way up. If you're in the technology industry, you know, you've kept on going up and you've kept on pushing forward. And I think this has been a huge wake up call to people to understand, for brands to understand, for business owners to understand that, you know, before you spent hundreds, tens of thousands into brick and mortar, into, you know, designing a shop, you made sure you had the best tiles, you had the best shop, you had the best ACs, you had the best till, you had everything, you know, fantastic. But then you downloaded a 1,000 euro themed website and you expect to sell the same way. Forget it. It doesn't work like that. You know, so people need to understand, you know, that the market, the audience, the people they're connecting with on Facebook and Instagram, on Twitch, on TikTok, on anything, they live online and they're going to be shopping online. You know, that's where the business is, you know, and that's across, you know, every generation. It's not anymore, you know, even more, you know, the elderly people and, you know, the vulnerable people who are now stuck at home and don't want to and cannot go out, they're shopping online. You know, there's no more, you know, my grandma never shops online. Of course she does, and she's super happy shopping online now. You know, and that's going to keep on changing. You know, I mean, if you look at Revolut and you've got kids, you know, I keep getting, you know, alerts both from Revolut and my kids to sign them up to Revolut Junior so they can buy online.
Yeah.
You know, so it's going to change. And unless we're agile, unless we evolve fast, you know, many big brands will die.
Mm.
Very good point. I think that leads us on to the third question, which you've touched upon, Peter, about sort of the form. So how are we bringing products or services to market online? So that's obvious because of, you know, no one's going out, everyone's staying in, or, you know, the amount of people that are out and about has definitely reduced. So everyone's at home online. So the form of how content is delivered, undoubtedly, if you're not on the tech, you know, bandwagon, you're missing out. The question that I have is about the actual substance. So we've seen this apparent rise in the online buying and the online sort of trading, but has this for you individually as freelancers and as agency founders, has this actually translated into more work? Which means, are you taking more photographs? Are you writing more articles? Because from the outside, that's what one would assume. You know, everyone's online, so everyone is going to be expecting a certain type of quality of content online. But are your clients actually understanding that, or because budgets have reduced, so they have less sort of expansion towards, you know, commissioning more work? And how if it hasn't translated, why do you think that's the case? Brian, do you want to kind of kick us off here, because I think you'd have a lot of interesting things to give us insights on in terms of the quality of the content and yeah.
Yes, as Peter was saying, unfortunately, I've seen some horrendous content passing in front of me in the last months. But I think to answer your kind of question, I think it's a bit of both. There are new clients who understand that they need the good visuals, good photos, which actually at the end of the day make the site and the is half the experience or maybe more. Partially either because maybe they realize now that either their product is not doesn't reflect well, doesn't project well, you know, for their customers, or because maybe their customers complained, or I don't know, they have friends tell them, oh, you know, your product looks much better and than it actually does on the website, you know. So I've had cases when people see maybe, I don't know, a photo of a product, a photograph. They're like, oh, you know, I went to that, but the site doesn't reflect anything like that. It doesn't reflect the same material, or because you cannot really see, for example, the texture from the bad photos. So sometimes when, you know, sometimes they're not, some of the brands are not aware of how bad their content is possibly, until maybe someone draws their attention, and then they understand when they see the better photos, and then even they see an increase in sales. On the other hand, then because of budgets and maybe even logistics, I think some companies have actually been using internal people. I don't know if they have a marketing team or staff that are doing a bit of everything, taking online orders and so on. So they're even photographing products and, well, doing everything related to the online shopping experience. Some can do well, I guess, decent job. But unfortunately not all, and obviously it's not the same like getting the right people to do, you know, the proper thing. So I think it's a bit of a mix. So budgets, yes, I think have decreased, but there have been new clients that understand now more the importance of online, because maybe before they didn't tap into it, and it's now it's happening. So they understand that they need a better presence, or maybe diverting budgets into online instead of shop or other forms of advertising. And the others that are maybe, you know, doing everything internal to save costs and use stuff and keep the wheel going, I guess.
I can imagine that a lot would be, if it's a big team, that they would be shifting a lot to internal work, internal production. But I can imagine.
Yeah, so it just keeps the stuff busy, kind of. So.
Yeah. Or if they are already busy, it must be really stressful for them to learn so many new skills on top of everything else, and trying to keep their job, and yeah. It must be pretty crazy. But it's all because of budgets, and that's going to be the biggest struggle, I think, with companies making it or not, and trying to keep content looking sharp, but trying to do it within budget. And I don't know.
I think there's in Malta especially, there's like online and then brick and mortar, and that this is like this is a thing where it's like not, the online is not valued at brick and mortar just yet, so they don't really see it. So even if you say, oh, sponsor this ad for €100, for example, and you're like, this is not going to make sure, you're not going to get 100 messages for this €100, but you will have you'll have a conscious kind of stream going through people's minds, and people are more aware of your brand, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just like, it's a long-term game with online, I feel, and people are struggling still to see the investment in it. So that's why that's what I struggle with personally, like with clients myself. Like they don't see like that just, yeah, okay, we did that content and like that's one thing, but it's going to have to keep on going. So I think it's like the consistency of it is something that people, especially clients, like want. They want that kind of like, they want it straight off the gate, but they don't realize that it has to be like this like really like long-term plan. And that's where I was always going with my clients, but it's just kind of like increased now because the budgets have gotten shorter. So it's like the first thing that they don't want to, they want to take off in terms of the budget is like maybe sponsoring or maybe less photos and stuff like that. So it's trying to kind of keep that going in a sense.
Actually, that's really interesting. Peter, do you, because I mean, Hannah, you mentioned how in Malta there seems to be still a bit more of a, not so much of an eagerness to jump onto this online, for the consistency of the online content. And Peter, you mentioned earlier that you have, you know, both local and international clients. Is this something which you see, I'm guessing would sort of something you've seen before, and not just during pandemic times, but do you see this sort of divergence in perspectives on the approach to the online?
Well, I think we're lucky to have a number of clients who do believe in the importance of online. I think their budgets aren't aligned as well as they probably could be in terms of, you know, the sway to online and not. I think there's also a distinction here now between the sort of old school traditional type of businesses and kind of the old school who've transformed and pivoted to continue being relevant and resilient no matter where we're at. But we're also seeing a massive increase, and this is sort of, you know, where the excitement is, in a lot of people's, or a lot of new entrepreneurs coming to the market with new ideas. And this was kind of expected. It happened also in the last financial crisis where, you know, people were without a job or people with their backs against the wall had to do something, had to fight back. And I think, you know, one of the expectations that we have now, and something that we're sort of kind of foreseeing, is there's going to be a whole new stream of new businesses coming out, which are going to be digital first, which are going to focus on great logistics. And I mean, right now, at this moment, you know, in Brandwagon, we've never worked on so many branding or rebranding projects at the same time. There's so many live jobs right now. And our digital team are extremely busy right now, just working on new projects coming out. The rates aren't the same. Obviously, our costs are still the same, but the rates aren't the same. So if we had to look at it from a purely accounting perspective, we're still not in happy days stage. But in reality, in terms of, you know, the potential that there is out there, we've seen some amazing, you know, entrepreneurs really reconfigure their business. We've seen some people who've had, you know, been out of the job, been let go, you know, their business is never going to work in the same way, you know, just fight back and come up with some new ideas. And we're really working hard in supporting these guys. So I think, you know, we had to remove the economics out of the economic activity. We had to look at, you know, forget about the numbers and just focus on the actual, you know, value that's being created. I think there's a whole new, you know, segment of the market, which is probably going to come to fruition within the next probably 6 to 18 months. So all the brands that we're working on now, all the new ideas that are happening right now, they're going to come, you know, to the market in the next 6 to 18 months probably. And I think that is where the positive stuff is going to happen. There's also going to be a lot of the same sort of kind of revolution within probably music, within creativity, within art, within, you know, the film industry. And I think we're expecting to see, you know, much more of this, you know, coming to market soon. So I think, you know, we are in a bit of a, you know, a financial lull right now. And, you know, it's going to be very, very hard to pick up rates. There's going to be industries which are going to die. There are going to be industries which are just going to be hit and have to pivot. And there are going to be industries that are going to do really, really well. I think this is a moment for anybody in the industry. Before you could take a choice of kind of risking it, and now you're in a stage where you just cannot afford to get it wrong. And whilst there might be, internal marketing teams who might say, yeah, okay, we'll try and do this ourselves, there's no way you're going to manage to get the quality of somebody like Brian, who's been working on this for 22 years. I remember Brian when I was sitting next to him in sixth form. His work was already good then. His work is fantastic now. And like Brian, there's so many talented individuals out there. It's very hard to kind of add on, photography to your list of things to do whilst you're managing social media channels, whilst you're creating content. There's no way you're going to get the quality of work like Hannah does. If you just put out a post, just put out a post. You don't just put out a post. There's years of experience. And I think, business owners need to realize this isn't a time where you can just gamble it. This isn't a time where you can afford to, we'll figure it out as we go. No way. There are jobs on the line here. There's your brand's reputation. I'm not saying just channel it all to freelancers and agencies. I'm saying decide which parts you collaborate on. And I think the trick here is in collaboration. Of course you should try and keep your costs down, but spend it wisely.
Our favorite word.
Collaboration is going to be the key thing. Yeah.
Before we have a question that's come up, but before we address the question, Carla, did you want to ask about the closing remarks just before we launch into the questions, and then give a few minutes before we wrap up by 8-ish?
Okay, so sorry, I was just reading all the comments on Facebook whilst we were going through that.
Yeah.
Which has been great to see that, although life is sort of getting less about lockdown and more about socializing, that people are still enjoying sitting at home, listening to Zoom conversations. Because I thought the recording would be listened to more than this live stream. So I was just really curious to see how that would work out compared to previous ones. So just to sort of closing remarks, we recently had a chat about freelancer versus entrepreneur, and it was a webinar we had with Carmen from Singapore, which was later last week.
Last Thursday, a week ago.
So we wanted to bring that into this conversation as well. And what do you guys think about that industry? So the freelancer entrepreneur versus being employed right now. And Russ, I'll just ask you, because I was a bit sidetracked, to see if you want to add anything to that.
All the comments. Yes, no, as Carla said, sort of where we've hit sort of ground zero. Everything that we thought of, that we thought we knew before, has sort of been wiped off the chalkboard, and we're sort of looking at a clean slate. Where do you see things? I mean, it's so difficult to predict. I mean, we don't even know what we're doing tomorrow, let alone in a few months. But connecting to this sort of freelancer versus entrepreneur, employee conversation, where do you see things unfolding in the content creation scene in the next, I would say, few months? I'm not going to go beyond that because, God knows. And that's just an open question to all three of you. I mean, I think, Peter, you briefly talked a little bit about it. Maybe Hannah, do you want to give us a little bit of your...
I think in terms of a freelance content creator, like, your brand is everything. So if you want to keep on going, you have to really you don't have to be a personality or anything like that, but you need to keep your brand really, really strong. You need to be recognizable. Your art needs to be recognizable. There's just certain things like that, I look at Brian's work and I know it's Brian's work, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's there's a certain style of writing. One of my friends, Nat, she's an amazing writer. I read 2 sentences and that's her writing. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing where people, like I was saying, they want authenticity. They want a connection to someone. So I think going forward as a freelancer, I think your brand is your safest and biggest bet, because people want to buy in. You want to work with people that you enjoy working with, you believe in them, and you appreciate their work. So I think that's one of those things, that's the direction to go in and take it really seriously. But in terms of like versus anything, like you have to put food on the table, you have to pay your rent. So like whatever that works for you, you could get experience in a different market if you have to get a job right now. If the work isn't coming in the door and you have to do something, at least try and go for a market where you've either never worked in or you've wanted to work in, and think about upskilling in that way. So I think that's my view on that whole situation, to be honest.
What about, well, Brian, since Pete's already kind of given us a little bit of what he thinks is going to happen from here on out, what do you think is going to happen to the whole, I mean, do you think we're going to have an increase of freelancers, or maybe just people going into agencies more, or what do you kind of feel, how do you feel we're going to develop the whole content creating scene from an employment point of view?
Yeah, I think probably with content creation, especially for online, and now it's more, well, easier to some extent than ever with, I don't know, whether it's digital cameras or writing or web development with all the platforms. So I'm sure there's going to be an increase on the freelance point of view, even maybe it's easier for people to keep their costs low and, instead of working in the corporation with the rented office and so on. However, I think maybe people need to be wary. Obviously, people need to start somewhere, even if they're new freelancers and so on, as well as companies who are employing whatever. Is just to see that whoever they're getting is good enough for what they require, because obviously there are different people for different content. So it is like getting the internal person doing the job or getting someone has more experience or professional to do, whether it's the design, the writing, or photography. So I think it's a bottom line is that brands understand maybe what they want to achieve and the right people for that. But I'm sure that there's going to be an increase of more maybe people working remotely, freelance, or employed, or both. And even my case, as much as being working freelance, I work with both agencies directly with clients, so it's quite a mix. So I think there's probably going to be more of that, horizontal than vertical kind of systems.
That actually ties in really well to a question we got through the Facebook audience by Marietta. So her question is, what process do you use to understand and identify what can differentiate you as a business or as a freelancer? A whole lot of freelance projects have also experienced the same pressure of projects being pulled back. So that's an open question. I guess maybe Brian and Hannah might be able to give a bit more of because as freelancers, it's perhaps more your...
I suppose, working, because I was pretty much new to the scene in terms of being a freelancer and self-employed. I can only really talk about experience and just to have contracts and use your time as a business. So like, I don't know, obviously, Marietta, like what you are working as, but you have to treat all of your time, all of your creative ideas, every single thing that you do for a client or someone that even just asks you for advice, like whether you want to give that to them for free or not, like you're still a business. And I've had to learn very hard lessons about having contracts. So that's my situation in terms of like what the difference is. There's not really a difference. I mean, it's hard because obviously it's creative and you want to be a creative as well. So that means enjoyment and using a different part of your brain. But like in terms of a client that you've planned with, that's a business contract that you need to have in place. And that's a hard lesson I think every freelancer learns within a year of starting out.
Yes, I agree. I think there's this conception that to be a business, you have to have an office and have to clock in the 9 to 5. But in reality, it's not about the setup. It's about how you approach the work that you do. And you can be someone like Peter who heads an agency, or you can be someone like Brian and Hannah who are freelancers. But it's the attitude that you bring to the table that ultimately defines whether you are a freelancer or, well, whether you treat your work as a side gig or whether you're actually a business, regardless of whether you're a freelancer or an employee of a company. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Or, I mean, you've obviously been on the island for a little longer than Hannah, so you might have a bit more to say about perhaps seeing how things have changed over the years, because you've obviously been practicing in Malta for 2 decades, more than 2 decades. So
that's maybe ancient by now. Yeah, I agree with Hannah. I think maybe with freelancers, especially the ones starting now, maybe something I see is that sometimes they might be happy doing the job for free or at a really low fee, and eventually that backfires on basically the whole industry, including themselves, because eventually it sets a new norm of an even lower low, that eventually, you know, people expect, now we are at a time where people expect more for less, paying less, but eventually, you know, they don't weigh in things like equipment, time, and all expenses which are generally involved, your experience, and everything that, you know, people are actually putting value to, you know, price. So I think that is something that new beginners need to keep in consideration, both from themselves and for the whole industry. Because unfortunately, I feel that maybe in the creative field, it's a bit less controlled than other fields like, I don't know, the professional fields like, I don't know, auditing and law and so on, where, you know, there are more of kind of set guidelines of what makes you a professional and how to actually get your warrant and so on. So it's a bit of a more open platform of kind of everybody can do, you know, this type of work kind of thing. So I think people have to be careful with that.
I don't know if you had anything else to add, Peter, but I mean, I know you're not a freelancer per se, but...
Well, to be honest, I mean, Brandwagon started off as a freelance network. So I think being a freelancer or being an agency is just a life decision. I don't think it's a matter of, you know, you're an agency and you're a freelancer. There's no difference. I think in terms of the potential value that a freelancer or an agency can give, I think they can equally be of value. And I really struggle to understand why so many freelancers so undervalue the work that they deliver to clients. Just because they're freelancers doesn't mean you have to charge less. I understand that the cost structure of running an agency is very, very different. Maybe the difference in the work that's given is of a different nature, not necessarily of a different quality. But you know, I think that, you know, having the right contracts in place takes out the uncomfortable discomfort, you know, of having a discussion right at the end when somebody doesn't want to pay for what they've, you know, given, or when somebody wants to change their brief at the last minute. I think, you know, the way you price, the way you charge has got nothing to do with the amount of time you give to the project per se, but the amount of value that you're giving to the project. You know, 1 hour of, you know, of anyone's time is a multiple of the amount of experience they have and the quality of the work that they're delivering. So the cost should be based on the value and the quality, as opposed to you're an agency or a freelancer. You know, I think that being a freelancer is just a life choice, you know, and we collaborate still with a lot of freelancers, and I think, yeah, we support freelancers and we're always there to help freelancers. So there shouldn't be this big divide between our freelancer and an agency. I think, you know, we're all creatives and we have to support each other.
We had a whole conversation on this, didn't we, Carla?
I know, we've had a whole talk about this, which we bring it up in conversation for every webinar, because it's so important, just knowing your value and I guess being confident about that. And I think with a freelancer, when you start out, it's about confidence. So you're always undercharging until you get those first few jobs. And then it's really difficult to make that jump, especially if you're trying to make it with the clients that you started out with. So yeah, but if we can go on about that for ages.
Turn this into content creation and knowing your value, another 2 hours of conversation.
Yeah.
So tempting.
Yeah. Yes, but I think we're pretty much wrapped up with questions. I don't know if anyone else has anything. I'm just checking, but I don't see
There's something in the chat, but maybe it's.
I think.
Oh, sorry, that's not.
But if anyone who's listening or who will listen into this recording at any point after this have any questions, I think we're pretty much wrapped up with questions. I don't know if anyone else has. I've seemed to sorry about that. Technology is on my side. I told you there was going to be some weird thing happening.
We almost reached like 55 minutes or something, I think.
We're doing so well.
We were, and then I came along and threw everything out the window.
Just wanted to say, Hannah, I loved following all the content you were putting out during lockdown. I really love that you kept your style going, even for your personal content.
Well, yeah, there wasn't much like artistic approach in terms of like what was going into my project. So I think I was just like, I'm going to make this coffee look as cool as possible. The highlight of my day.
It's nice to see attractive visuals when you're...
Yeah.
But I think that's actually what might have looked very trivial in some ways to you, Hannah, is actually, I think, reaffirming your aesthetic and going back to what we said earlier about being true to yourself. I mean, you weren't doing it for clients, you were still, you know, practicing your what you do in a personal context and staying true to that vision and that aesthetic, which you weren't changing radically. So affirming and sort of expanding into that, which is something which I think we're going to be looking a lot more at.
So going back to what Carla said about confidence, like when you start out, you're just like, what am I doing? And then as you go on, it's like, oh, okay, like I know what I'm doing and you're not paying me enough. And we all need to, especially as freelancers, it's definitely something that I talk to all of my people in terms of, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, but it's definitely something that we do undervalue at the beginning for sure.
100%. Something we talked about actually with Carmen, that we had this webinar that Carla mentioned earlier about the self-confidence part of not succumbing to this imposter syndrome and thinking I'm not good enough for this and why should I even charge these? And this is what it all comes down to. If you aren't charging certain rates, it's because you don't have the confidence in your skills. And it doesn't mean that you have to overcharge, but at the same time, you know, giving away work for peanuts or for almost nothing, it can work in some ways, because as we said at this talk in November, it's something which you can do in certain cases, but at the same time you have to be aware when you do it and why you do it, and to realize that your work has value. And that's all about having strong sense of self-worth, which I feel as creatives, well, as humans, but as creatives in this particular field, we aren't really taught. It's something which I think we should start teaching kids from like a young age. We're taught about getting the best grades and, you know, getting that university degree and all that, but we're not taught about valuing ourselves as humans with what individual unique skills we have to bring to the table. So I think that's a big part of this conversation, but I digress. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone wants to go get dinner now. And so we've sort of wrapped things up here, but Carla, did you want to add any last words before we sign off and I don't do any more tech drama?
Not really. I just, because I made a comment about Hannah's photos and I just remembered about all the toilet paper shoots that were going on, and then Brian toilet paper shoot.
Well, I had to kind of think.
Yes, I loved it.
That was awesome, Brian. Loved that. It was such a cool thing. Really, really, such a great idea.
Yeah, it's about glamorizing the necessity of the times, I guess.
Yes, we'll link it to our page for anyone.
Yeah, please do. I'm very curious now.
I haven't seen it. Oh, you've got to see it. It's brilliant. It's absolutely
brilliant. Oh, yeah, sure.
It's on a share screen.
Brian sharing screen.
I'm going to break the connection, so we can do that afterwards. But I think we're done. I'm just checking if we have any last questions, but I don't think so. No, we don't. So, as I mentioned, this will probably be the last webinar that we do for a while. We're all heading to the beach and all the rest of it, so we're just chilling. But as I said, we have our social gathering coming up next week, on the 8th, which I think is a Wednesday, over at Cafe Society from 7. And a big thank you to Hannah, Peter, and Brian for having joined us on this virtual couch. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you for all of your insights.
Nice meeting you both. Sorry.
No, go. Hopefully we'll actually all meet in person now after we've had this conversation. It'll be the perfect excuse. And thanks, Carla, for co-hosting alongside me. I wouldn't be happening without Carla as well. So thank you. And we will sign off. For the rest of you guys, if we can just jump back on in 2 seconds after I've signed off. And then we can all go and have dinner.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye.
Thanks. You
Bye.
too.
Thank you.